Good morning, everyone.
Mush.
Excuse me. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
The snow is getting to everybody, so that's okay. Um, good morning again. We are learning. We are learning Mishna Gittin, Perek Zayin, chapter 7, Mishnah Aleph, Mishnah 1. Before we begin, today's Mishnah has been dedicated by the Garland children in memory of the Nishmas of their uncle, Gavriel ben Moshe Nochem, his Neshama Shav and Aliyah.
Amen.
Okay, Perek Zayin, Mishnah Aleph. Mi shachazay kurdiakis. Person who has been seized by a mental illness called cardiacus. Okay, now what is this illness exactly? So the way this clearly is explained is, this was an illness that caused mental confusion. It resulted from drinking wine that had not yet aged, which was often possessed by a demon whose name was Cardiacus. So he got this sickness named after him. All right. So the problem is here, this guy who has been seized by this, his mental capabilities have become limited. But Amar, and he said, "Kiss will get liishti." In that state, he says, "Write a get for my wife." So what do? Do you listen? The answer is le'er maklum. He hasn't said anything. It's like he's never said anything. A person who gives instructions in that state of mind cannot be relied upon, and therefore we don't listen. And they bring down here on the bottom that not only that, even if he later recovers, right? He gets past this. The get cannot be written based on the instructions he gave when he was not of sound mind. If he still wishes to divorce his wife, then he must repeat the instructions. Meaning, if he gives instructions when he wasn't of sound mind, they're not considered valid instructions. So even if he gets better afterwards, you can't do anything based on those original instructions. If he gives you new instructions, a different story. But based on the old instructions, you can't. And they also add, the same is true for a person who is not of sound mind for any other reason, such as if he is drunk, to the point that he is unaware of what is going on. Anything he says during that time is legally meaningless. Okay? So that's the first part of the Mishnah. Now, Omar kisvu ged leishti. Let's say he first said, "Write a get for my wife." He was fine. V'achazai kardiakis, and then he was seized by cardiacus. V'chazar v'omar, and then he went ahead and said, "Al techtevu," meaning in that state of mind, in that state of not sound mind. He then says, "Don't," meaning he basically says he's backing off of what he said to do before. Ein devarav achreinim klum. The last words don't mean anything. The words that he said when he was sound of mind, those count. And the words that he said when he was not sound of mind don't count. That, which means that now here they bring down in the note something really very interesting. And that number one, what we're saying here is that if this person said write a get, then he got this cardiacus illness, and he said don't write the get. Those words don't write the get don't mean anything. The first instructions stay. Mm-hmm. Now, number one, that does not mean that you can write the get while he is in the state of loss of his mind. That's I bring down here. The Mishnah does not mean that the Mishnah does not mean that they can write the get while the husband is stricken with cardiacus. Since the husband himself cannot write the get at that time, others cannot write it for him. That's an interesting idea. Interesting halacha. He gave the instructions before, but if he can't do it now, then you can't do it now. Rather, the Mishnah discusses a case where the husband became healthy again. The Mishnah teaches that the get can now be written without getting new instructions for the husband. Since his original instructions were valid, its cancellation of them was not, his original instructions still stand. So if he becomes okay now, you don't got to ask him again. You just move forward. And if he wants to really change his mind, he's got to tell you that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Next, new case. Nishtatik. A person, because of an illness, became mute, can't talk. V'amrulay, and they said to him, Nechtev get li'ishtecha, should we write a get for your wife? Now again, typically when we have these kinds of cases, it's because he has no children, and if he dies without children, she's going to have to go through the whole Ibam issue. And he's not necessarily deathly ill right now. I don't know if he's deathly ill, but clearly some serious illness has struck that he can't talk anymore. And therefore, in order to protect his wife, they're asking, should we write a get for her? V'hirkin b'roshai, and he nodded his head in agreement. And he nodded his head in a way that typically means yes. Okay, so what do? Beit Ganaisai Shleisha Pa'amim. We test him 3 times. Meaning, if he is at a point that his illness has affected his ability to speak, then we cannot assume that he is sound of mind either. And therefore, we got to check it out. We got to check out if he is sound of mind. And we ask him 3 questions. Now, the explanation here about these 6 questions are that this is done by asking him 3 questions whose answer is obviously no, and 3 questions whose answer is obviously yes. And we see how he responds. And, as he says here, as they bring down here, these questions are about things that are commonly known. For example, for a no question, we ask him in the middle of the winter whether there are any summer fruits growing on the trees. So, I mean, we're not asking him major questions like, what's the state of, what's the capital of Montana? We're asking things that are more obvious in front of him. Okay, and thank you. We ask him obvious questions, and then also, as they bring down here, we alternate the no questions with the yes ones to reduce the chance that his answer is simply a series of repeated nods that happen to be right. Yeah. So we alternate. Okay, so im amar alav lav, if he said no, where he's supposed to say no, and he nodded with his head no in a way that typically means no. Okay, val hein hein, and he nodded yes, where the answers are meant to be yes. Then they may write and give the get for him. Meaning, if he shows that he has, if he can answer these questions and answer them, the yes is the appropriate answer for yes, the appropriate answer for no, and again we alternate, then that means he's sound of mind, and we can move forward. On doing what? The Mishnah says, they should write it and give it. Now, a question arises. They only said to him, the wording of the Mishnah is they said to him, shall we write a get for your wife? They didn't say, shall we write and give? And we had a halacha before that if a husband just says write, you cannot base that and say give. Unless the circumstances are where, he was under stress and we assume that he wanted to give it because he's saying right, he wants it to give it. Why didn't he say give it then? Because he was under pressure. He was anxious, like he's being taken out to be killed, as we had before. Now here, all we said to this person who is responding to the questions about whether he should get should be written for his wife or not, and he's only responding by nodding, they said to him, shall we write a get for your wife? They never said, shall we give it? Nonetheless, the Mishnah here says that after we check him out, and we know that he's sound of mind, and he nodded yes to the question about giving the get, about writing the get, that they should give it also. And that is because, as they say, although the people only asked the husband if they may write the get, and it was to this that he agreed, they may in fact write it and give it to their wife. This is because it can be assumed that since the husband is sick, he wants to divorce her as soon as possible to spare her from Yibum. Meaning, why be doing this all? Because he's sick, to the point that he can't talk. So therefore, this is already a serious enough situation that, he may want to be able to get her divorced before something really bad happens, and she'll fall into the whole situation of Yibum. So we all know this is why we're doing this now. And therefore, if that's what we know why he's doing it, then we can assume that when he nodded to yes, he also means to give it, again, to spare her, which means he wants to get her divorced as soon as possible to spare her from any of the negative results that could come if he passes on. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.